Hades 2 was revealed live at the Game Awards on Thursday, and the trailer already has over 2.5 million views. It came as a complete surprise, and some people, myself included, thought Supergiant would never make a sequel. Well, I was wrong. So now I'm making a video all about the sequel, where I'll go over the game's premise, characters, locations, and a few other odds and ends. And this is actually my 100th video, so a very special shout out to all you indie fans who love these games just as much as I do. First, let's go over some frequently asked questions that Supergiant have posted on their blog. Hades 2 is releasing in early access sometime in 2023, just like the first game did. A full list of other platforms will be announced down the line, but the game does have a page on the Epic Store and Steam. Hades 2 is a direct sequel, although we don't know how much time has passed since the first game. And you don't need to know anything about the first game before playing this one, but there will be plenty of references to the characters and events of Hades. It's currently in full production and is being worked on by a team of more than 20 people, including the original 7 who worked on Supergiant's first game, Bastion. Since it is such a small team, Supergiant works on one game at a time. That means work on Hades 2 started at the beginning of 2021, about 3 to 6 months after the first game came out of early access and launched in full. Being a sequel, I'm going to assume there was less work to be done on most game systems, and it was more a process of tweaking and adding onto what has already been built. Okay, with that stuff out of the way, let's dive into the trailer, starting with our protagonist, Melinoe. As far as I remember, she was never mentioned in the original game, so a lot of the characters we've grown to know and love might not even know about her. Either that, or they're good at keeping secrets. Probably a mix of both. The big bad enemy this time around is Kronos, the Titan of Time, and the father of Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, among a few others. If what I'm remembering from the Percy Jackson series is correct, the Titans lost a war to the gods at some point and were imprisoned in Tartarus. We'll most likely be going there to face him directly, as the description for Hades 2 says, "Battle beyond the underworld, using dark sorcery to take on the Titan of Time." But what I'm more interested in is where we're starting from. I think it's the surface of Earth. In the intro animation, we see the moon and a bunch of trees in the background as Melinoe spars with Hecate. She is the goddess of witchcraft, the moon, crossroads, and is also heavily associated with the underworld. So this place could be somewhere on the surface, or it could be a magical space that can't quite be marked on a map. Wherever our journey does take us, Supergiant promises that we'll explore a bigger, deeper, mystic world, vanquishing the forces of the Titan of Time with the full might of Olympus behind you. I'm very curious to see how this whole story unfolds and how we get all the gods on our side, but the developers are sure to keep that a secret until launch. Hades 2 will of course have new locations, challenges, upgrade systems, and surprises, including the Arcana Altar, the ability to tame witchy familiars, and gathering reagents using tools of the unseen. These could be the tools right here, not quite sure, but if they are, they also double as Melinoe's main weapons. We also see her use a magic staff, and I'm sure there will be some others too. And this time, there will be a major focus on witchcraft, which we can use to infuse our weapons of the night with ancient magic. This comes at no surprise since Melinoe seems to be training under Hecate, calling her headmistress here. Supergiant has also stated that Hecate is so important to the underworld and practice of witchcraft that they felt they needed a whole new game just to try and do her justice. So she's going to be a pretty big focus here. As with the first game, they'll try to be as accurate to existing myths as possible while also creating their own unique story, which we know they happen to be really good at. Now let's look at some of the other characters that showed up in the reveal trailer. First is Moros, also known as Doom Incarnate. And guess what? Among his many siblings is Thanatos, who happens to be my favorite character from Hades. I really hope he makes a return in this game so we can see how the two of them interact, like one big happy family reunion. Speaking of siblings, the biggest question I have right now is what part will Zagreus play in all of this? I admit it would be a little weird to see him make an appearance in Hades 2 and not be able to play as him, but I could probably get used to it. But I'm sure he'll at least be mentioned by some of the characters. Only time will tell. Next is Apollo, twin to Artemis, and he's most notably the god of music and the sun. In this clip, he offers us a choice between 3 boons: Nova Strike, Blinding Spirit, and Clarifying Light. Another sibling of Moros and Thanatos is Nemesis, who seems to be a rival of Melinoe's. I'm guessing she'll reappear throughout our runs as a mini-boss, much like Meg did in the first game, and that's based on their little conversation here. This screenshot gives us a little more insight into their relationship. Now, both Melinoe and Nemesis are students of Hecate, but our character is the one who's tasked with defeating Kronos, so I'm sure there's an interesting dynamic to dive into there. And then we have an unknown shade who yells at us and is also camped out in our bedroom. The shade turns out to be named Dora and also appears to have a polite side. And could this shade possibly be related to Pandora, the owner of a very interesting box? Maybe. Last, we see Hades, who has most likely been captured and imprisoned by his father, Kronos, or some other dark and powerful forces working for him. In total, there will be, quote, dozens of fully voiced, larger-than-life characters, including plenty of new faces and some old friends. And we can grow closer to them through a variety of new interactions and experience countless story events based on how our particular journey unfolds. Now let's talk about the places we'll be exploring. First up is what I'll call the surface. Overall, it has a green and purple color palette, and most of the trailer does take place here. This is where our spawn point is, our bedroom, and where we can talk to Hecate. So naturally, it's full of magic crystals, smoking cauldrons, and other witchy looking stuff. It seems like this is maybe a spot where we can either spar with Hecate and learn new types of magic, or possibly the first mini-boss fight. This is also where we face off against this leafy enemy. Now, I'm not sure if these 2 spots are also from the surface. They do have trees, but also a different vibe with the gray and maroon palette. So we could be in our main hub area, somewhere like the House of Hades in the first game. In Melinoe's room, there's a pet frog, which you can pet, and a lot of glowing crystals and tapestry, all making it very, very cozy. The other main location we see is this golden flooded temple, which is probably the second area of the game, as Supergiant won't want to spoil anything that's too far into the story. This has to be somewhere in Poseidon's domain, with all the shells, tentacles, and these fishy-looking enemies. To me, this place looks a bit cooler than the surface, especially with all the pipes and the other little details scattered about. We'll also be able to talk to Nemesis here too, so I'm wondering if she'll show up randomly on different levels to help us, like Thanatos did in the first game. There are just a few more things I want to touch on before I wrap up this video. First is this scene in the trailer, which reminds me a lot of these scenes from Pyre. In that game, you would use the stars to guide you to the next location, and I just really like the way that Supergiant made the whole map system in their third game. This could be a little hint about some kind of map or travel being added to Hades 2, or it could just be part of Supergiant's unique style, but it definitely did stand out to me. And speaking of style, the animation at the beginning of the trailer was made by Studio Grackle, the same team who worked on the trailer for the original Hades and Hyper Light Breaker. Just a cool little tidbit. And that just about does it for my thoughts on Hades 2. There's a ton more I could go into, especially with the different enemies and characters, but I wanted to make a more digestible overview video first, before going too deep into that stuff. But until I get around to that, there still are a lot more games that I want to cover. So thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll leave you with a few other pretty cool indie games to check out.